Hey, this is Khan, you're watching Ninja Pulls. We don't cover a lot of rumors on this channel, but right now there's a lot of buzz about a remake of The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Not only are these rumors credible, but they keep getting more urgent. The latest suggests it's been remade in Unreal Engine 5, stealth, archery and stamina systems have been overhauled, the UI has been reworked and modernized, and apparently it could just be a month or two away. None of this is confirmed, and some or all of it could turn out wrong. But an Oblivion remake would be a big deal to many of us who have extremely fond memories of the original game, or to Skyrim fans who've been craving some more action in Tamriel but struggle to get on board with the tech and visuals from 20 years ago. If you need a reminder, Oblivion is the one where Mehrunes Dagon invades Tamriel after the doors to Oblivion are opened, and we are tasked by Emperor Jean-Luc Picard, Uriel Septim, to track down the rightful heir to the throne of Gondor, Cyrodiil. But as is so often the case with Elder Scrolls games, the main story is really just set dressing for the real player adventure, which is to go wherever and do whatever, poking around a massive open world, reading books, picking flowers, and punching mud crabs. Oh, and let's not forget getting thoroughly traumatized by the Dark Brotherhood questline, still one of the highlights of the entire series. So is it time to start getting excited? What exactly have we heard? The original rumor goes back to 2023, during Microsoft's court battle with the Federal Trade Commission over its proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard, where some old internal documents were submitted to the court as evidence, apparently by accident, and then became public. These showed a roadmap of planned game releases from 2020 onwards. Clearly, those timelines didn't hold up, thanks no doubt to the pandemic, but much of this stuff has since happened, just a couple of years late. Indiana Jones, Starfield and its DLC, Doom Year Zero, which we now know is called The Dark Ages and is coming later this year. Note that it does say Oblivion Remaster here, which is not the same as a full remake, but all the more recent leaks suggest that we'll be getting the latter. Neither was ever confirmed, but some former employees of Virtuos revealed that the remake was happening there. If you haven't heard of Virtuos, I can't blame you. They are low-key one of the biggest game developers in the world, but rather than working on their own projects, they co-develop a lot of AAA games, DLCs and remasters with other studios. The buzz around the Oblivion remake continued quietly in the background until earlier this year, when some hoped it would finally be announced at the Xbox Developer Direct event in January. But Nate the Hates podcast said nope, this announcement is coming a couple of months later, and the game itself is coming in June. We don't know Nate's sources, but his track record as an industry insider is pretty good. Also on January 13th, MP First reported that the website of a former Virtuos employee contained further confirmation and more details on the remake, specifically its development in Unreal Engine 5, so it will be fully remade, not just a port to a newer engine, but a rebuild of everything from the original title. That sounds promising. 6 gameplay systems will be reworked: stamina, sneak, blocking, archery, hit reaction, and the HUD. Here are some direct quotes from that article with a bit of context from me. For the blocking system, ideas to improve it were taken from Souls-like and action games, as the original system was considered too boring and frustrating. In the original Oblivion, blocking at high levels was very effective at reducing incoming damage, but it had no timing component, and once you got off the novice level at level 25, you were not fatigued by blocking, so it didn't cost anything. You could just hold block indefinitely, then drop it to attack with a weapon or cast a spell. From level 50 upwards, there was a chance enemies would recoil when blocked, and at higher levels this could knock down or even disarm your opponent. But it was all passive and automatic. The player had no agency over these mechanics. That was all fine back in 2006, but first-person melee combat and gameplay feedback in general have come a long way since then. And today this approach feels pretty low stakes and not very dynamic or rewarding to play, so the description of this update makes a lot of sense. It sounds like we can expect something that feels familiar to anyone who played Skyrim, but with timed blocks and maybe parry windows. So long as they've found a way to communicate this stuff through the game world and not rely too heavily on the UI, this could be very cool. The sneak icons are now highlighted in the improved sneak system. Stealth in Oblivion was actually pretty easy at higher levels, but in the early game it could be a frustrating game of hit and miss. It wasn't always clear when or why you were detected, so giving players a better sense of this moment to moment would be very welcome. But again, one of the reasons Elder Scrolls games tend to be so successful in their immersion is the clever use of UI that finds a way to telegraph the info you need while getting out of your way. It's an underappreciated accomplishment, and I hope they can thread that needle here. Damage calculation methods were reworked, the stamina system was modified to be less frustrating for the player, making the knockdown that occurs when stamina is depleted more difficult to activate through changes in calculation methods. The green resource bar in Oblivion was called Fatigue. It was basically what we think of as stamina, except that as it depleted from full, everything you did became less effective, including your damage. Also, once the bar was completely empty, any attacks that drained fatigue would cause your character to collapse on the floor, and you'd have to wait around for your fatigue to regenerate. This was not super intuitive, and reworking it seems like a good idea. It'll be interesting to see what they've come up with. The HUD was changed to make it easier to understand and more aesthetically appealing to young players. Hit reactions were also added to improve the response to damage inflicted on the player and NPCs. The HUD and user interface in general are one of the most obviously dated features of Oblivion. Try firing up the original vanilla game on a modern system and it still looks pretty nice and runs well. But man, the UI feels so jarring compared to what we've become used to in the years since. I'd be surprised if they hadn't looked to Skyrim and hopefully some of that game's most popular UI mods for inspiration. Hit reactions are another thing that our brains expect to see today, but we didn't necessarily miss in 2006. Enemies would cry out in pain when taking damage, there'd be splashes of blood, but they wouldn't react physically to those attacks unless it was the killing blow, when they would often ragdoll hilariously. Finally, Archery was improved to make it more playable and modern in both third and first person viewpoints. To me, this just suggests that someone was smart enough to recognize that nope, the whole stealth archer thing in Skyrim was super popular, we can't not have it. Quite right. Again, I cannot guarantee that any of these quotes or my interpretation of them are completely accurate, but with outlets like Polygon and Forbes taking these reports seriously, I think it's okay for us to get our hopes up. And if we finally get a reveal and a trailer for the Oblivion remake, I imagine so long as it looks really good, that'll be enough to get a lot of fans excited to play it. We'll have to wait and see, and maybe we won't have to wait that long. Following his predictions of a June release, on March 13th, Nate the Hate tweeted an update, saying that he now expects the game to be announced and possibly released in April, with a minimal gap between the two, possibly even a shadow drop, where the initial reveal is also the official release. Again, we probably won't know this is happening until it does, or doesn't. But followers of the Elder Scrolls Online might have noticed that the big reveal of that game's next major update is scheduled for April the 10th. And followers of this fine YouTube channel will already have some idea of what's coming, specifically involving Manimarco, the King of Worms, a massive figure in the lore and history of the Elder Scrolls who makes a big appearance in Oblivion. ESO is set 750 years before those events, and the last time we saw Manimarco in that game, he was defeated and imprisoned. But we know that at some point he does return to wage war against the Mages Guild, culminating in an epic battle. We know this because the events were described in a history book in the original Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, back in 2006. So the whole thing kinda links together nicely, with Manimarco potentially making his return to both timelines this year. If you haven't seen my video on this yet, do it. Even if you don't play ESO, just the lore and story behind this guy is super cool. As if that wasn't enough, the massive fan-made project Skyblivion is also due for release this year. That's well worth checking out in the description if you haven't already. And that's gonna be it for today's rumor mill. Like I keep saying, nothing has been confirmed yet. Remember to support the content. Just becoming a member for a few dollars a month empowers us to keep making the best content we possibly can for you guys. And if you can't do that, just sharing the video helps a lot too. Thanks very much. If you're excited about these rumors like I am, I hope they all pay off soon. Until then, take it easy guys, and thanks for watching.